Hello, hello, hello. As you can tell, I am not indoors. And as you can tell by me wearing my mask, I hope, and hopefully you can hear me, I am out. In the beautiful sunshine that it is. And yes, I know I forgot to upload, but this is because I had literally, every time I went to go record, I just wasn't feeling it. I was not in the right state of mind. I just wasn't. I know this is gonna be a weekly thing with me, where I'm gonna have to try and get a thing where I can go and record ideas, obviously. But every time I tried to think about this idea and how I could put it into motion, it just it wasn't up to scratch for me. So as you can tell by the title, this is about living with someone with autism. Obviously, my brother Nath, he's got autism. Was diagnosed at a very young age, and then when I came along, obviously it became double trouble for my mom, because she's got two kids with disabilities, and they're very high demanding disabilities, and they're not easy to look after. One hyperactive child, one always breaking his bones, which was me. But Nath, with his disability, I think I mentioned this before, at a young age my mum had to make the sacrifice, which was either save herself or, drastically do something worse, because Nath was completely out of control. So she sent him up to a school in Doncaster, and then quite a few years later, he came home, and then he's been living with us since he was 18. So almost gone nearly 12 years now he's been living with us, if my math is correct, because he's going to be 30 in a month. Not even a month, 3 weeks, which is mad. But yeah, Nath and I have always had our bit of we've always had a connection, Nath and I. Always have, always will do. You've seen that from when I've taken him to the cinema before. People who know me know that Nath and I are good connections, obviously. And it's just how we are. But when Nath first moved in, we weren't living in Beckenham, we was living in Orpington, and it became difficult, because at the time my younger brother was living with us as well. Three young boys in one house, in one room, let alone, was difficult with one TV. But then we moved to Beckenham, became a little bit more easier. Sorry, there's a dog. Yeah, it became a bit more easier because we got our room. Nath got his own room, we got his own space. As he grew up, obviously, he started adjusting to the fact that when he was at the school, obviously, they didn't teach him shit, so we had to teach him everything. Even when it came down to speaking, forming sentences. And it was tough in the beginning, because it was literally like teaching the baby how to do things. But because he used to use sign for everything. In the first few years it was very difficult, because we lived quite a few years without having someone constantly going this or this or this or this, and it became quite draining at times, and it still is draining today, but it's easier to manage now because he's a lot more calmer than he once was. But in the beginning, when we first moved here, he was constantly saying stuff, doing stuff, and you're just like, Nath, don't do that. Nath, shut up. No. And it's you don't want to be horrible to him, but it was the experience for us as much as it was for him, in the fact of learning to live with someone with autism. And Nath can be very persistent when he wants to be. There were certain times when he wanted to be alone. There were certain times when he tried to be involved, but too much involvement would be too much for him, so he'd separate himself from that. But there's always a memory that I always think of from when we were younger, is when I think I was about 14, 15 maybe. Nath was he used to have this PS2 and he loved this PS2. And one game he used to play consistently was Tarzan. A brilliant game, by the way. But there was always one thing that he could never do, and it's if you've seen Tarzan, if you haven't, what the hell are you doing? In the film, obviously, Sabor the leopard kills his parents, and in the game, there's a thing where you have to get past Sabor the leopard and kill it. Nath could, for some reason, never complete this level, so he would always call upon either me or my younger brother, and mainly me, because I was better at handling the situation. And I'd get him past the level, and then 5 minutes later, come back down because he failed. He failed St. Gelson back at. He's like a checkpoint in the game, and he'd always have to get past the ball. And it was fun because he kind of built up a bit of a rapport between us. Anyway, as years went on, obviously, we got him back into the talking to us, doing things like us, enjoying things with us, that sort of thing. Again, he was still repeating things like he'd say no Cinderella, no this, no that, no that, and he would normally say no Beauty and the Beast. And that stemmed from when he went and saw Beauty and the Beast live at the theatre. That was one thing he loves. And you'd have to say no Beauty and the Beast, no Lion King, no Peter Pan, no this, no this. And you have to go through all the plays that he's been in since. And after a while, you kind of get annoyed with it. You're like, oh no, shut up. So you go, oh, shut up. And then that became a thing with him. Because then, if you came too much, you go, Nath, and he goes, oh, shut up. And he made us all laugh. Which was cool, obviously, and it was never meant for ill-timed things for him. It was just like, Nath, enough, sort of thing. Because it gave us all gave us headaches sometimes because of it. But then, the rapport between me and Nath really grew a lot. Mainly when we had a family member move in and she needed the bedroom, and then I had to make like a sacrifice in a sense, like Nath had to move into the bedroom with me, which was like, I was kind of used to it in a sense because I used to share with my younger brother, but I had a lot more patience with him than anyone else. So I was like, just do it, it's cool. And to be honest, it's fine. I still today live in the same room, so it doesn't bother me. But there are just times when it's just like, really? Because he'll wake me up sometimes at like 7:30 in the morning with what he's watching. It's just brotherly things, like he'll sometimes forget to turn off his radio, so then I have to go turn off the radio. There's times when I no longer have a TV in the room where we are. He's got his TV. I no longer have a TV because he would always try and counteract what I was watching with what he's watching. It's just his thing. He always has to be the loudest TV in the room. So I gave up on TV on that. If I want to listen to music, I've got to listen to it. With headphones on. He doesn't like any music or anything coming from it. And that's the thing, you got a real build of patience with him. Because there are times where you're just like, I really want to do this, but I know I can't. So, having patience with Nath is like the biggest thing. But, obviously our biggest thing is cinema, We practically, up until COVID hit, we were practically going every weekend. So when that got shut down, it was a bit like, what the fuck, what do we do, sort of thing. And at the moment it still kind of is, because even they have reopened, but it's like, it's very slow going on what films they're putting out and what is there to see, and most of the viewings are like 2:30 in the afternoon. Nothing's really early like we used to go, and this stemmed back from 2015 maybe. So we were going, like, all three of us, me, my younger brother and Nath, but my younger brother didn't like it because he didn't like getting up early, and he didn't like the fact that we got there early because I like to get it ahead of time just in case something goes wrong, because it has done in the past where uh, I've taken Nath obviously and I've taken him on my own, but it was just the fact that we used to all three go, and then one day my brother was like, I can't be bothered no more, da 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 da. I was like, fine, I'll take him. He's like, you can't do it. I was like, watch me, bitch. And then it just stemmed from there. From like 2015 onwards, me and Nath have just gone to the cinema on and on and on and on. And we've seen hundreds of films. You know, I've seen some really bad films. I've seen some really good films. But the thing is that it builds up it built up a lot of trust between him and Nath and I. That yes, I've got my disability, he's got his disability, but we're not letting the disabilities come between us for letting us go see things. So I'm talking like we were going every weekend, and some of the films I've seen Sherlock Gnomes, I've seen Trolls 2, I've seen The Green Book, I've seen Avengers of him, I've seen all the live action Disney films, Lion King, Aladdin, what else was there? Tarzan we saw Jungle Book. There's a lot of them that I've gone and seen, and some of them are a bit like, you know, they're harder to watch with him because like the Disney ones are a bit more harder because he'll shout out things. Like when we saw Lion King, he made me dance when it was in the jungle. What was it? When Mufasa dies, he went like when we saw this. We saw it in theater. We saw Mufasa in theater at the Lyceum. Amazing, but when Mufasa died, he went, and there's about 200 people in there. It goes dead silent. Nath goes, Mufasa's dead, and everyone just starts laughing. I'm like, fuck. That was when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14. Fast forward to like last year when he did it in a cinema, and everyone just looks at me, and I'm just like, great. But and then obviously the last thing that he did right at the end of Lion King, obviously people must have seen it, Simba does his roar and he went Rah! And then he got up and left. I'm like, you fucking bastard. But he does that, he does things like that, he'll shout out things doing it. Like when we saw Frozen 2, Olaf, yes it's Olaf, Anna, and most of the time 95% of the time it doesn't bother me. It mainly bothers me obviously when people start staring and whispering, and I'm just like, nah, I'm not having that. So a lot of the time when I do things with him, obviously I have to be like very vigilant in what people are saying or what they're doing. Kids I don't mind obviously because kids are going to have their opinions, but it's the parents and the adults that start looking and like, really, you should be more educated on this fact. But that's the thing, like, I've got into arguments before where people will look because he'll start rambling things off from films and stuff, and in the end you just I get annoyed because I'm like, you're meant to be an adult, and wait for that go bus. Yeah, it's like the second I mention that they've got autism or he's got autism, the tune changes. You know, it's just like, why? I don't get it. It just pisses me off. Why should one like word change your opinion on things? But what I can tell you is living with someone with autism, it can be very stressful. It can be challenging at times, but it can also be very funny. Like some of the things he picks up from what we say. Like my mum normally when she drops something, she goes, "Oh bollocks." So he's now going to the fact if he drops something, he'll go, "Oh bollocks." My main thing is if I drop something, I'll go, "Fuck's sake." So he goes, "Oh, for fuck's sake." It's just how he is. He copies what we say, and it is funny at times because it catches you off guard. And especially when, like, the other day was hilarious. It was all in the kitchen. I went to the kitchen for dinner and that, and he was coming out because he just had his bath. And he ran into me, and I went, "Oh, fuck's sake, Nath." And he turned and went, "Fuck's sake." I went, "What did you just say?" And he went, "Fuck's sake," and walked off. And we had us all in fits of laughter. I was like, "You cheeky bastard." And he knows. He knows when, like, to push people's buttons, and he knows that he can go a little bit overboard with things, but when he needs to be told off, obviously we have to tell him. But we're never too over the top with it, because, you know, you don't want him to think that he's done something extremely bad. But it is fun. It is sometimes like, alright, here comes another day of this. But fuck it, I wouldn't change it for the world. It is just, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And that's just life. So, yeah. That's my synopsis of living with someone with autism. I will try and be back with another one next week. Hopefully it'll be on Tuesday. Obviously this one's going out Wednesday when I'm recording this. But I've got a few more ideas that I'm going to talk about. Whether I'll come to the park to talk about them because it's easier to do it. Whether I do it at home, who knows. But until next time, I will see you soon.